NUBIART Diary number 440 for the 22nd of April 2022. NUBIART, a different perspective on the African world. Okay, first up is the April promos, and what we're going to discuss first is Palabras Urgentes from Susana Baca, which is out now on the Real World Records label. Susana Baca, the former Peruvian Minister of Culture, marked 50 years in the music business with the release of this album, whose title translates as Urgent Truth. As a musicologist and writer, she has extensive knowledge of the country's various music traditions, Andean pipes, cumbia, Amazonian chicha, and Afro-Peruvian music from the coastal sugar fields, and she draws on them for this recording of cover versions. Her flowing, intimate vocals remain undimmed as she runs through the 10 tracks. The album, produced by Michael League of Snarky Puppy, opens with La Herida Oscura, a homage to Micaela Bastidas, the female guerrilla leader and hero of Peru's independence struggle. It was written by Jajouka Grande and marks the 200th anniversary of this victory. Baca says of Negra del Amor that it is not a song, it is an encounter between my heart and the winds and popular rhythms of the Andes. It tells of how men of African descent are viewed, and in Baca's delivery it becomes a song of celebration that reminds her of when pupils sang it to her during her time as a school teacher. Color de Rosa was written by the poet Alejandra Romualdo for the painter Rosas. The emotions range from rage to hope to feelings of liberty. Baca said of the poem, I added music to these words, hoping that it might remind us that today, more than ever, we still have many roads to travel because we have nothing, we have everything. Argentine tangoist Pedro Lorenz's Milonga de mis Amores conjures up the spirit and energy of the stately ballrooms. People are urged to move their feet and their hips to a rhythm that unites all dancers and drummers in joyful exuberance that helps them forget the daily hardships. Carino is a song of Creole romance and seduction. The tenderness of the title can be both a caress and a fond memory that makes everything feel sweet. Cambalache is an anti-corruption song that calls for more truth than public life. Sorongo is a salsa standard by Puerto Rico's Tite Cure Alonso. It is a song of faith found at the crossroads of rhythm and soul, of the Caribbean and the universe. Juana Azorda is another heroine of the Peruvian independence struggle, and this song is a tribute to all women who fight for liberty and justice. Damarong tells of the dusk of love that represents the only moment in the evening where everything flows, where everything is poetry. The album closes with a rousing choral finale of Vestida de Vida, one of Baca's favourite songs in her repertoire. She sings of protecting Mother Earth from global warming, for solidarity, for our planet. Susana Baca said of the album, age casts a different light upon the world, and this album seeks to express freely and honestly those things that I love most intensely. With my own spirit and the hearts and talents of all those who have contributed, we offer this album as a renewal of our traditional music. I hope those listening to this album feel both a love for life and a love for living truthfully. The second album we're going to look at is Dancing Under the Moon by the master musicians of Jajouka, led by Bachir Attar. It will be released on Glitterbeat Records on the 13th of May 2022. This is a 9-track double CD recorded in the Rif Mountains of Morocco from the Bachir Attar-led master musicians of Jajouka. Only one of the tracks re-recorded here in 2019 is less than 10 minutes long, allowing the musicians to stretch out and deliver a trance-like experience across 110 minutes. The master musicians of Jajouka are a collective of Jabala Sufis that we saw in London a few years ago. However, the group has been recording for 6 decades in this form and with the other similarly named outfit from the same town, the home of the tribe Al Sarif. Most members are descended from the healer Sidi Hamid Sheikh, whose shrine the Al Sarif holds sacred. The acoustic and percussive fiddle songs called Jibre, which is mountain music, are typical of what is played for visitors to Jajouka after a savoury evening meal of couscous and tagine. The album opens with Dancing in Your Mind, the longest track at 16 minutes. The other tracks are the avian strains of the bird praise for Allah, Kamsa Kamsin, the 55, the heavy percussive trance of Habibi Insatini, Halilia, the hypnotic Yes, Yes, Be Patient, My Heart, Dancing Under the Moon, the title track of the album previously recorded with Ornette Coleman, Leeta, and the closing track, Opening the Gate. This is another great installment in the history of the message that the master musicians of Jajouka continue to share with the world. The third album that we will review is Orchestra Massako, and that is the title of the album and also the name of the band, and that will be released on Analog Africa on the 3rd of June. This 4-track album is the 14th release in Analog Africa's limited dance edition series. Orchestra Massako were Gabon's national orchestra with its band leader Jean-Christian Mbomba Makaya, known as Mac Joss, the baobab of Gabonese music. The band were among the rumba outfits that swept the continent, and Mac Joss was given personal encouragement by the Congolese giant Franco. Orchestra Massako were formed in 1971 as the Armed Forces Band and soon became the National Orchestra with Mac Joss as the band leader. They featured the singer Amara Toure from Guinea-Conakry in their ranks, who had his own Analog Africa compilation Amature 1973 to 1980, released back in 2015. Studio Mobile Massako was set up towards the end of the 1970s, with the master tapes being mixed in Paris. About a dozen long-play records were recorded between 1978 and 1986, mostly released on Mac Joss's own label, Mass Pro. He worked tirelessly as an ambassador for Yeponi culture, including proverbs and idioms from his native language in his compositions. 2 tracks from this compilation, Ginekele, Mohi, and Debembe, have already been released as singles. The first is classic rumba with Amara Toure on vocals. Another Amara Toure track in the same vein, Temede, will be released as a single on the 13th of May. The other track is Bongumi, with its slinky, rippling guitar licks. Both this and Debembe have vocals from Mac Joss. This is another faultless Analog Africa release, giving an insight into the range of music that's been coming out of the continent over the decades. For April Media, we review Why Not Me, From Trinidad to Albert Square via Empire Road, a memoir, and that's by Corinne Skinner Carter and Zed Nia Reynolds, and it's being published by Blackstock Media, Blackstock Books. This autobiography of the pioneering Trinidadian Corinne Skinner Carter looks over her life in 7 decades acting, teaching, and dancing career. It also considers Corinne Skinner Carter's central involvement in the cultural life of Britain, including her pivotal role in the development of the Notting Hill Carnival, Europe's largest street festival. Corinne started singing and dancing in public at 3 years old. Later she appeared in plays and performances with directors and choreographers Bosco and Geoffrey Holder in Trinidad, where she became famous for her Shango dance. She followed them to Britain, officially to study teaching, but she continued to move in circles that allowed her to create a successful career on stage and television. Corinne appeared in all the stalwarts of British TV, such as The Bill, Casualty, Doctors, Grange Hill, Lovejoy, A Touch of Frost, Prime Suspect 2, London's Burning the Movie, The Gentle Touch, Man About the House, Love Thy Neighbour, Play for Today, Baby Mother, and Dixon of Dock Green. In theatre, she was in Amen Corner, based on the book by James Baldwin. She was in Coronation Street and then Empire Road, one of the first soaps on British television to have a majority cast of African descent. Later she would appear in EastEnders at the time when the East London-based soap was still drawing in multi-million viewing figures several nights a week. Corinne appeared as a dancer on the music show Cool for Cats and with Edmundo Ross, who was a major exponent of Latin and Caribbean music in Britain after the Second Imperialist World War. Her early film experience included as a limbo dancer in Fire Down Below, which starred Robert Mitchum and Rita Hayworth and was based on the Nobel Prize-winning book by William Golding. She also appeared in the Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, Rex Harrison version of Cleopatra, again as a dancer. Other dancing parts included in the Frankie Howerd vehicle, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and the Bond movie Live and Let Die. She appeared as Cassie McFarlane's mother in Menelik Shabazzi's first feature film, Burning an Illusion, having previously appeared in Horace Ovi's classic Pressure 5 years earlier. Corinne's favourite appearance is her performance in Martina Tiley's Dreaming Rivers, an elderly Caribbean woman's reflections on loss and longing as she looks over her life. Corinne's husband was the educationalist Trevor Carter, a cousin of the communist publisher and events promoter Claudia Jones, who had arrived in Britain in the 1950s after being deported from the US for her organising activities. As a cultural activist, Corinne was at the centre of African Caribbean life, performing at the early versions of the Notting Hill Carnival. She was close friends with John LaRose, another Trini, who had set up the African Caribbean bookshop New Beacon Books, and was at the centre of the Black education movement, the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books, the George Padmore Institute, Institute of Race Relations, the New Cross Massacre Action Committee, Caribbean Artist Movement, Anti-Apartheid and Global Anti-Imperialist Solidarity. Other people in Corinne's orbit were the historian Richard Hart, the family doctor Lord David Pitt, the Guyanese Premier Cheddi Jagan, the war veteran Billy Strachan, Michael X, who set up the Black House in Holloway, and the promoters, agents, musicians and songwriting duo Pearl and Edric Connor. Throughout her career, Corinne worked alongside other actors of African Caribbean descent, such as Paul Robeson, Norman Beaton, Rudolph Walker, Joseph Marcel, Cy Grant, Mona Hammond, Gary Beadle, Ram John Holder, Nina Baden Semper, Nadia Katos, Imra Caesar, Marianne Jean Baptiste, Clark Peters, Diane Parrish, and Carmen Monroe. Her favourite person to work with was Helen Mirren, who Corinne found to be very kind and helpful. Corinne Skinner Carter's archive is now held at the University of the West Indies, where it has been overseen by one of her cousins. This is a fascinating read of the life of a highly influential actor, dancer, educationalist, and cultural activist who has lived nearly a century and filled her life with experiences that have impacted so many people in different fields. Okay, let's move on to lyrics and spirits. O ye gods of the underworld who set yourself up against me and who resist the mighty ones, the stars which never set have led me on my way. And that's from chapter 78 of the Papyrus of Ani. This time we will be marking the first anniversary of the passing of Danny Lewis. He was a singer-songwriter, bandleader, guitarist, sometimes bassist, entrepreneur, and applied mathematician. Danny grew up in Kingston, the capital of Jamaica. His family owned a grocer's shop in Trenchtown, which was frequented by many of the major recording artists of the day. He moved to Scotland and played in bands such as Skanga and With Me in the African Ambassadors. Tunes such as Martyrs, dedicated to the anti-apartheid women in struggle, and Baby Landlord, Bright Eyes and In It were fan favourites. Our big gigs included the anti-apartheid benefit in Stirling, and when we supported the Crown Prince Dennis Brown in Edinburgh in December 1987. Danny Lewis passed away in May 2021. He is survived by his mother, sisters, and several children in Jamaica, the US, and Scotland. I return the compliment he paid to me in live shows. Great man, that. What we're going to play is Shining Light, which was the African Ambassador theme tune, and that was written by Danny with the music by the African Ambassadors, and that was recorded for our demo tape back in 1987. Thanks for listening to this edition of NUBIART Diary. If you want to get in touch with me, it's Kubara Zamani, African Quest, PO Box 35165, London SE58WU. The email, africanquest@hotmail.com, and on Twitter, it's at NUBIART Diary. And we just close by saying talk sense or it don't make sense you talk. Guidance.